Okay, so let me get back to our website. And the reason we were actually not seeing this properly rendered yesterday was we were using a different version of Bootstrap down here in the index.html, and I was using classes for this version 3.4.1. So that is the reason we were not able to see any of those. Anyways, so do you guys have any questions from yesterday's class?
No, Anvesh.
Okay, cool. Are you guys able to see my screen just fine?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. So yesterday we were discussing about we were just creating all the components, right? We didn't do much, but just created the components. And today we'll actually do something with these components, like have something down here. So let's start with the recipe. And before actually doing that, I would ask you guys, or I would like to explain a simple concept. Okay. So whenever we try to define components, or whenever we try to write a HTML page or do anything, if you see down here, this thing is basically discussing about recipes, right? We have bakery recipe or bakery recipe list, or everything related to the bakery recipe. And one thing is common among all of those, right? Even though it's a list or just basic recipe component, the thing shared among all of those is the recipe, right? So in order to actually share something different among different components, like between any of these, we have to actually define what a recipe is, like what are the properties of a recipe is, like what does it, what are different things a recipe can have. Like for example, it can have a name, right? Recipe can have a name, and we can have a description, like name can be anything like let's say we're trying to create a bread. Description would be like bread, uh, something like bake the bread, something like simple. And apart from that, it would also be useful if we can actually show like an image for a recipe. Like so, I would say I also have an image for the recipe. So image would be nothing but like a .img or a png, or there are different formats, but one of these files. So even before we actually jump into defining what we can actually have in here within the bakery recipes, we have to define a recipe component, or not a component, but recipe. In order to do that, let us go back to our main bakery.recipe, create a new file, and let's call it as bakery. Since we are defining this one, we usually define any particular thing as such, what we're trying to define here, as a model. Okay, I'll tell you what a model can be. Like for example, bread, right? So if when I define a bread, let's say this is bread, all of these have different properties, like let's say country bread, right? It has a name and how to create that and all of that. Let me ask you guys a simple question. Let me explain you something simple. You guys are familiar with cookies, right? Like how to, or cookies are cookie dough, right?
Yeah, Anvesh.
Okay. So simply, before actually making a cookie, we would actually prepare the cookie dough, and or even in India, we not just cookies, but let's say we would take batter for idli or dosa or something, right? First, we would prepare the batter, right? We would have this batter, idli, let's say idli batter, and when we're trying to make idli, we would just use that idli batter and we would just put it into a pan, right? I would have, let's say this is like a pan, and once I put the batter in this one, I would make different idlis, right? In here, I have different shapes, or usually it's the same one. So similar way, right? I would define a particular model, okay? I would just define it to have these properties, and within the computer memory, whenever, let's say this is our machine, whatever machine it is. So it would be something similar to what we do with idli, right? So in the machine, I would try to say, I'm trying to create a recipe. So it would create some space within the machine for this particular model. So if I want to create another one, I would simply say, I would create another one, so on and so forth. I can create as many recipes as possible, but initially I would define what the recipe is. Once I do that, within the machine, I can actually create as many recipes as possible. That is one of the reasons why we actually define this thing first. Once we define that, we would try to replicate. I will show you guys in a bit how that actually works. But the basic concept is similar to any real world thing. Like you would have the batter, you would try to create all of those individual components. Anyways, so coming back to our bakery recipe. So let's say we have, we said we would have a name, description, and an image. Image would be whatever we want to show. So in order to define a model, this is how we would do it. We would simply say first thing is export. Whenever I say export, it simply says this thing is available to be used in other components. Okay. And here I am defining a class. Class is nothing but this is what class is, the recipe with all those property names. So I have 3 different properties, right? And I have to specify what this class name is. So I want to say the class name is bakery recipe, right? Okay. And let me also change the name down here. I would say, okay. Anyways, within this, I have to define different properties. Before actually explaining that, okay. So let's say you guys go to restaurants, right? Like buffet. And whenever you go to a restaurant, you would have a main section, right? If you go to a buffet, there would be a particular section where they would serve different things here. You can have vessels down here, right? And once you pick up something from here, you would go back to your desk, right? Or a table, and you would just serve it yourself down here. Anyways, why am I explaining this example? So let's say this is the food place, and this is your table. So whatever you have down here, right, in a buffet, these are all available to everyone, right? Not just you, but someone else can come. They can have their own table, and they can actually bring all of these items to their own table, as simple as it is. So this thing down here, whatever is common, is public to everyone, right? This is available to everyone. But whatever you have in the table, only you get to use it. This is private. So similar to whatever we have here, we can actually define the same thing for our models. So it's as simple as that. So if I want to share something from my model, I have to define it as public. So since I want to share the name, description, and image among other components, I want to make it public. So if I don't, let me say, I would say, and I would want to name it as a name, and this is of type string. Okay. If I don't put public here, this only belongs to this particular class, and no one can actually access that. Only this class would access that. Since I'm saying it's public, it's available elsewhere. Okay. And I also want to define few other properties. One is description, like string, and also another one, image path, wherever the path is, and that is also another string. Any questions so far? Okay. So coming back to here again to our idly batter and idly example. So whenever I want to make idly out of idly batter, what would I do? I would just take it out from my batter. I would put it in a tray, right? And that is how it's created. Similar to that, we have defined a particular recipe, but without actually initializing it. That is what they would call in programming initializing or constructing. Without actually doing either one of these, the model is of no use. You actually have to construct it. So in other words, we have to also define a constructor here. So the constructor here just simply says, this is how I can actually define a particular recipe. And here again, I have to define the names of those. I have to access these. Again, in our example, whatever I'm showing you here, I would try to put these three things here. And I also would show you in a bit how to actually instantiate this bakery. But anyways, in order to instantiate or in order to make this actually be from a idly batter or create a particular recipe within the machine, I have to instantiate and or I have to construct it. Okay, in our case, since we have three different properties, I'm trying to create three different things down here. Another one is image path, and it's a string. And just saying that wouldn't be good enough. I also have to relate. Again, I'll show you guys in just a bit how to actually use this class and how it's useful. But right now, the important thing is I have to also specify how this thing is related to here. For example, here I'm saying description, but this is one way of doing it. I don't actually have to do this, but this can be helpful for you guys later on. Like, okay. So in here, I simply created a class called bakery recipe. I defined different properties in here. And I also am saying this is how I can actually create the bakery recipe. by specifying 3 different properties. Again, I'll show you how we can actually use this one. So any questions about anything so far? Okay. So let me go here to bakery list. Let me define. And let me define a particular variable here, which I want to actually show in the HTML page. So in here in the component, bakery recipe list component, I can simply specify what, again, coming back to our example here, using this, I would try to create more than one idli, right? And similar to, I have created one model or bakery recipe. I would try to create multiple, bakery items. And I would simply define a variable down here. Let's say bakery list, right? Or let's bakery recipe list. Okay. It is of what type? I want to define it as of this type. So I just would copy paste this down here. It is of type that, but I don't want to just show one thing, right? I want to show multiple since this is a list. So I would define it as an array. And to define an array, I would simply use these ones. Okay. So you see, it's actually complaining. It says bakery recipe cannot find bakery recipe. So if I define it here, it's not good enough, but I also have to say where it is actually coming from. The simplest way of doing this is once I click on that, it will show me this, and I can actually do that, and it would automatically import that bakery recipe. Most of the times this would work, but in case this doesn't work, you have to actually remember where the model is from. In our case, let's see, I have the bakery recipe list in here, but the recipe model is in a folder talk to that. If you guys want to see exactly, maybe in File Explorer, I have list or TypeScript in here, but I have to go one level up, and here I have the model, and that is what it's trying to do. It's going one level up and trying to get the model from there. Anyways, any questions so far about what we're trying to do? Okay.
Anvesh,
Yeah.
Can you explain the process again briefly? Like little confused between the bakery recipe list and the constructors.
Yep, I'm coming to that down here. So if I okay, constructor simply says these are the values I would be taking. It says I would be taking 3 values, okay, name, description, and image path, and it would be assigning it to these 3 properties. That is what it's trying to do here. When it says this dot name, it is actually down this property here. Again, the same for description. Let me show you again. So let me try to instantiate it and you would know. So for instantiating, or let me go here. So whenever I create a recipe class or something, it basically doesn't have anything, right? This is just a definition. Okay. This is saying this is how the recipe should actually be. Until and unless I actually specify or instantiate it or construct it, okay. It's also called instantiating or constructing. Unless I actually do one of these, it won't actually create anything in your hard drive. it would, once you, let me go back here. Okay. In order to instantiate, I would simply say new, okay, bakery recipe. And see here, it is actually showing me 3 properties, right? Name, description, image path. So by actually doing that, I'm actually trying to pass whatever values I want to give. For example, the first one, let's say I want to specify a cinnamon roll. That is the name for that particular bakery item. Okay. Let's say ROLL. And the second item, I would simply say this is a description. Description is nothing but, let's say this is cinnamon roll. Third one is I want to specify a path. So by actually creating a constructor here, I'm trying to pass these 3 values to this constructor. And later on, okay, let's say later on, if I want to access any particular value, this is how I would do. I would say simply dot, okay, and I would simply say name. And can you guys take a guess what the name would be in this case? It would be cinnamon roll, right?
Yeah.
Because this is trying to get the first one.
Okay.
So I'm trying to construct it here. So I'm trying to pass all the values here. And once I do that, I'm trying to assign it to the public variables I've created here. And later on, when I want to access that, I would simply loop through the array, like using a for, or why doesn't this work? Okay. I can loop through the array using a for loop, or I can simply access those particular elements in this way, right? This start bakery recipes, and I'm trying to get the first component, and I would say simply name. So I'm trying to create the constructor here so that I can actually assign those values and also to use it later, to use a bakery recipe list later. So that is what I'm trying to do here. When I use a constructor, it's doing nothing but getting all the values from whenever we try to instantiate or create a new recipe. And just pass those values, assign those values to our properties defined here. So is that clear? Is that?
Yeah, Anvesh. Thank you.
Okay. So in case if I want to create more than one bakery recipe, I would simply, again, with that, since this is an area, I would put a comma and I would do another one. Like for example, let's say, don't want cinnamon roll, but let's say I want a banana bread. I would say that, would also define a banana bread. And I would also put an image URL down here, image path down here. Anyways, in this way, I can create as many bakery recipes I want. Okay, this is one way. There are other ways, but let's say if I want to do that, I would just simply keep adding more bakery items. Okay. Another thing, if you see here, I put the image URL to be blank, right? I specified I want image path, but I don't have any here. So one of the easiest ways or standard ways of doing creating images or using them is using assets. So I have a assets folder. Within here, I would simply create a folder called images. And I don't actually have to use an assets. I can also use it in app, and I can actually use it in my bakery recipe folder itself. But to keep things cleaner and as a standard practice, I would actually create a folder called images and within assets. Assets is something which is shared among the entire project. So I would have images defined here, and let us download some images. So let me search for a cinnamon roll images. And another important thing you want to do is select the tools, usage rights, and go for Creative Commons licenses. So if you're, whenever most of the images, again, they have some licenses defined. Some of them you cannot actually use them. If you use them in your website, they can actually sue you guys. So it's important that you want to take it from the public domain. So something which can be used in your website. You cannot use everything. Like for example, if you're trying to use an image of a movie actor or something in your web page, and if you're trying to publish it, if you don't have permission of that movie star, they can actually sue you. So it's important that you have to take something which is, this one. So it's actually available to use in your website. Anyways, so let me click on that. It says cinnamon rolls. Let me save the image. Okay. And also one for banana bread. Okay. And two, again, make it, don't click the commercial. So if it's a commercial license, then you have to pay them in order to use their image in your project. Anyways, so let me pick one, save image. Okay, and so I have defined that. This one, let me copy to our folder. Code and your source, and we have assets, within assets, images, and let me paste it here. And let's make the name shorter so it's easy. Okay. So in here, images, you see, I have banana bread and cinnamon, right? And I would ask you guys, how can I actually include that URL down here? Like, how would I do that?
By using href tag.
Sorry?
Href tag?
Sorry, what was that?
Href tag, reference tag.
Yep, href tag. But right here, I'm just trying to specify the location, right? How would I specify the location? That is what I'm asking. So I have app. Within app, I have bakery recipe. Within that, I have bakery recipe list, right? I'm trying to define, get the path in this component, right? And where do I have the images? I have it in source assets, right? So just asking, how can I actually navigate to that particular folder? So since I'm in app recipe list here, I have to go recipe one folder, app another folder, a third folder is source. I have to go 3 levels up, right? And once I do that, I have to go to assets and images. So I have to go. So I'm just saying, since I have to do that, so let me say, if I want to go 1 level up, I would use something like this, right? I'm going 3 levels up, and within that, I have assets and images, and there I have the cinnamon.jpg. It's important to understand how to navigate so you can actually specify that. Is this clear what I'm trying to do here? Similarly, I also have to go get the banana bread. So I would simply navigate I hope that is the name. But anyways, in order to avoid any errors, I will just copy paste this here, and someone is asking. Here the path. Mission bakery recipe. Okay. So, anyways, this is how we can actually define it. As of now, I haven't done anything in the HTML, right? All I have is in the TypeScript. And okay, so let me ask you a simple question. So we have different ways of communicating between TypeScript and HTML, right? I've explained you guys before. Like we have string interpolation, right? We have attribute binding, two-way binding, and okay. So I've also shown you guys example of how to. Okay. So if I look at my web page right now, you see I don't have anything, right? I don't have
any bakery items.
I don't actually see the list down here, so we have to include that here. And before we actually do that, let us go back to our HTML page. If you see the HTML page, I've defined bakery recipe, right? Which is nothing but this one, bakery recipe. And I also defined bakery products, which is this thing down here. Okay. Anyways, within our AMP bakery recipe, if I look at the HTML, I don't have anything, right? I just simply says bakery recipe works, right? So my question to either one of you guys is, how can I actually include this component, right? I'm trying to show all the bakery items in the list. How can I actually define those, or how can I actually show this component in here? That is a simple question in this HTML page. Shravan.
Can you repeat the question once?
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Can you repeat the question once?
The question is, so if I look down here in app.component.html, right? I have app bakery recipe, right? App bakery recipe is this one here, right?
Okay.
Okay, and if you look at the HTML down here, it simply says app bakery recipe works. Okay, but I'm trying to define all my list in here, right? This is what I'm trying to do here, right? So my simple question is, how can I actually include this component in here in this HTML page? That is all. How can I define this how can I use this component in this HTML page? I just have to use this, right?
Yeah.
So let me define that. Right now, this page is also empty. I don't have anything. So it doesn't show anything. But once I populate something in this HTML page, it should show down here. Is that clear what I was asking? And
little confused. Yeah.
okay, my bad. So let me find another. Okay. This is a main app HTML, right? Okay. Within this one, I've defined two different components, right? I said I have add bakery recipe. And app bakery products, right? Okay, but if I look at app bakery recipe, I don't have anything in here, right? In this HTML page. Initially, I didn't have anything, right? So my question is like, how can I actually get this list? How can I actually pass this list from this component to this component? That is my question. That was my question. How can I include this component in this component? So
yeah, but I think by adding the tag, selector tag.
Yep. So I would simply get the selector tag from here, and I would include that. So it's mostly, since Angular is mostly about using components and using those tags within another component. So that is what I'm trying to get to. We would have multiple, layers and all of that. So it's important to understand how we would actually structure everything. So I would have two different things down here, but within that I can have more components here, again defined here. So it may be a little confusing in the beginning, but if you can actually understand this, it's actually, it would be helpful for you later on. So again, Angular is nothing but group of components together, and it's important to understand how to use one component in another one. Anyways, I have a list. I want to include all the lists in our, the main bakery recipe component. So I just have to use that particular tag, and I would have access to that. But anyways, if I come back to our recipe list component, I still don't have anything in here, right? So I have to define the HTML for that. Okay. So yeah, again, is this clear? Is this confusing, or if you guys have any questions, let me know. Sorry?
It is okay.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Yeah, I have, next time I'll explain using more diagrams. So it could be, with that, I have, and within that recipe, I have another component, right? It's nothing but bakery list. So yeah, that is what I'm defining here. So it just gets done. Okay, anyway, coming back to our main app bakery recipe list component. So let me define using Bootstrap. Again, as I mentioned before, in Bootstrap, we have a container, and within that, we have rows and columns, right? So I can either define a container and define rows, or I can simply use a row. And another thing about Visual Studio is I can start writing using the class name. Like for example, if I say dot row and if I use tag, it would automatically get me that particular class again. Simply use dot. Since we are defining it as a class, we are trying to use a class from Bootstrap. We simply say dot row. Okay, when I have a row, I can have columns, right? So I simply say column, and I want this to be expanded across the entire thing. So since they have 12 columns within a row, I just want this to be through the entire component, through the entire 12 columns. So I would simply say column 12. So 12, and once I do that, that is what it will show. And let me define a button. And so this is BTN is another Bootstrap class, and it would get some styling for her element. So if I don't use that, okay, if I simply say, this is how the button would actually look like. It would look like a regular button. But if I'm trying to use a Bootstrap class, something as a button, okay, you see it actually changed the style from a regular button to look something more professional. So, okay. Anyways, I want the color of that to be green. So let me use success. So in Bootstrap, I can use the basic class, which is BTN. And if I want to use additional colors, I would simply put a dash, and success gets me green. Primary would get me blue. Okay. And I have danger, warning. Those are different. There are different, colors. And since I want that to be green, I would simply say success. And you can see it's green. Anyways, any questions regarding the class names?
No, on this.
Okay. So here I have, I'm saying new recipe. I don't want to say, or I can say new bakery recipe. And in here, okay, down here, let me put a horizontal row or a line, and let me define another class. So this is how I want my recipes to look like, okay? Simply in bakery list, I want, I can have multiple, right? I've defined two things in here, right? I've defined a cinnamon roll, and I also defined a banana bread. So this is how I want to look that to look like. I want the main product name on the top, and I want that to have that to be bigger than the rest of them. So I can use like a H, right? H is I don't want it to be too big, so I would use something like a H4. Okay. And below that, I want to show the description. Okay. So simply, I just want it to say something like a cinnamon roll down here. And let's say text of it is a little big. This is too big. So 26. But description to be small, like a paragraph. Okay. And I want to show the image down here onto the right. Okay, this is how I want the page to look like. Coming back here, okay, I'll define another row. I would say simply put dot and row. It would get me that class. And again, I want that to expand to that through the entire 12 columns. And here, apart from showing this basic thing, I also want this to be clickable. Okay. What will happen if we continued after row with separate column? I I didn't follow you. What is your question?
Oh, sorry, no question.
Hello.
No, not you. Shravan was asking something else.
Yeah, here we are giving two divisions for the row and column.
Yep.
Why we can't use column after row in the first
That is what
line?
I'm trying to do. In Bootstrap, if I want to use, let me go down here. Okay, I would have a main, like if you remember tables, right? I would define a tr, right? And within the tr, I would have a td, right? Why isn't this working? Okay. Interesting. Okay, anyways, I would have a tr, and within the tr, I would have a td, right? Table row and table column. That is what we're trying to do with down here as well. So I would have the row defined on the top, and within that I would use the columns, as many columns as I want. But right now I'm trying to use one column, which is occupying the entire row, and that is what. Yeah. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I've sent you guys a cheat sheet for Bootstrap. I would advise you guys to go through that. You would understand this better. Okay, coming back here. So I don't want this to just appear as is, but I also want this to be like a clickable link. So once I click on Cinnamon Roll, I want to also show something in here. Like I want to say something else in here. Okay, like I want to give it a few different options down here, similar to what we have. Okay, not Amazon page, but let's say I want to click this and I want to see few things down here, like more information. Here I'm just looking at briefly, but I want to do more operations down here, like add, delete, or a few other operations. But I'll get to what I want to do down here by simply saying I want this to be clickable, right? Like a link. So whenever I click this one, I want to display something else in here. So I want to define that as a link. So I would define it as a link. And right now, I don't want to go to any page, but I just want to say it there. Again, I've used a similar structure a few other places. I would try to fill this one once we're, again, here, I'm trying to, initially, I'm trying to get the basic structure of the entire page. Once we get that, I would go through individual components, do more things. But anyways, right now, I just don't want to do anything, but I want that to be clickable. Okay, and I want that to be like a list. So I would simply say, I would use another class, list group item. Okay, and here I've mentioned that I want cinnamon roll and description to be on the left and image to be on the right. I have a class for that again in Bootstrap. I would simply call it full left. So when I use full left, everything within this particular division, those all would be on the left. Okay. And in here, as I mentioned, I want it to be like a header, sort of a header. And there is another class for that, list group item heading. Whenever I use that, it would show it as a header. And I said, I just want to have the name, right? So let me say bakery recipe name. Okay. Oops. Okay. And I want to define the description below that. So I have a paragraph. Again, I have another class for this one. It's similar to this, but instead of using header, heading just simply shows it's big. The font size bigger than compared to the rest of them. I just want that to be text. And in here, you can see I'm just showing the description, right? Okay. I have all of this, but I want to show the image onto the right, right? I just want to include that, but the image should be on the right. So similar to what I have for pull left, I also have a pull right, okay? But let me define as a span. I can use a div or a span. And I want that to pull right. And in here, I want to show the image, right? And image has a source, right? And it has alt. Alt is, it will just say, let's say it just needs to say the name of it. So I would simply put name. Source would be the actual place where we're getting the images, right? So that is the source. Alt is how I want to define that in case the image doesn't show up. And also, let me give it a class. This is another Bootstrap class. I would just want that to be responsive. When I say image.responsive, it basically scales based on the screen resolution. Okay, and let me say, I just want the max height to be 50 pixels. Anyways, any questions regarding any of this thing down here? What I'm trying to define?
No, I'm
Okay, so let us go back to our page here, and simply says I have a bakery recipe description, and on the right I have the bakery recipe name. Right now, since I didn't define any source here, it doesn't actually show anything here. But if I actually place here some sort of actual location, it would show me the image. Okay. Anyways, we have a list of bakery items here, right? I have more than one bakery item here. And how would I actually try to show all of them in our HTML page? Can you guys think of any ideas? So I have a list here. I've explained to you guys this before. I want to show a list. I want to, you know, yeah, Lakshmi, any? So we do have something called ngFor, right? I just want to loop through that list items here. So I would simply use ngFor. And if you remember the syntax, it's simply let, okay? And I would define a particular variable name, whatever I want to use here. Let's say bakery recipe of, and what did I define the name here? Bakery recipe list. Okay, is this thing clear? Why am I using ngFor?
Yeah, it's for looping the
Yep,
release.
I'm just trying. Yep, I'm just trying to loop through each of the items I've defined down here.
Okay.
So in the first case, it would just get to the cinnamon roll, and in the second case, it would get to the banana bread. So that is what I'm trying to do down here. So I'm saying simply ngFor let so and so of so and so. Okay, right now I have basic bakery recipe name defined here, right? It doesn't actually do much. Okay, since I have two of those, it's actually doing that twice. And styling is a little bit weird. Don't think that is the case. What if I use it there? Sorry, go ahead.
The href end tag.
This one?
Yeah, end tag. You have to.
I mean, I will define this later on, but right now are you asking me why I have this one, the href?
No, the images are not coming. No, on
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because of the href end tag was mentioned at the last. Can you see that?
I'll go through how can I actually get that one, but yeah, sorry. So let us actually scale back to just once right now. Okay. Why is this to have this entire? I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. Okay, my bad. So, okay, I want to, I have a list down here, right? Bakery recipe, I have cinnamon roll. Let me show both of them. Anyways, have cinnamon roll and banana bread. And I'm trying to access the, let's say, when it's looping through, it would get first to the banana recipe, right? Sorry, not banana bread. It would get to cinnamon roll, right? And in order to access individual items, this is how I would do, right? Do you guys remember string interpolation?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is what we would do down here. So I would say bakery recipe and dot. Once you say dot, and in order to get the name, what would I do? I would simply say name, right? Since I want to get the name here. Similar to that, if I want to get the description, bakery recipe dot, again, description. This is how I would get those values here. And you can see cinnamon roll. This is cinnamon. Don't know what is happening with the styling, but I would fix that. But you can see it says cinnamon roll. This is cinnamon roll. Banana bread. This is banana bread. Bakery recipe name. Right now, it simply says bakery recipe name, but the actual name is, what is the actual name? Bakery recipe name, right? I can simply specify that here using string interpolation, and it would say banana bread and cinnamon roll. It isn't actually showing me the image because I haven't specified anything in the source. That is why it wasn't showing that. Again, there are two ways of doing this one. One is string interpolation, right? And can you guys guess how would I get the path of path down here for the source? Looking at our bakery recipe, and this is the third one, right? I'm passing it is the third one. And anybody, how can I pass the image path to our HTML page? Similar to bakery recipe.name, right? Bakery recipe.description gets our description, right?
Bakery recipe dot image path.
Yep. That is it. So I would simply say bakery recipe dot. I would say don't want to do any error. So I would simply say dot image path. Once I do that, you can see the images appear here. Again, I'm not sure what is happening here. It should actually show in two separate lines. But, try to fix that before actually publishing it. this belongs to this particular one. Okay. Uh, and you can see, since I specified that to occupy the entire, 12 columns, you see it's actually occupying the entire thing. When I do this, it's just moving around. Anyways, so I can either use string interpolation. There is also attribute binding, right? If you remember. So apart from using saying source equal to string interpolation in this way, I can also simply specify using attribute binding using SRC. I would simply put that, and I would say bakery recipe. Let me go back here. So this is another way of binding properties, right? So I can use string interpolation, or I can also use property binding. Anyways, two different ways: property or attribute binding. Any questions about any of these? How we are able to actually display, our how we are able to get assign it here and able to get it to here. Any questions about any of these?
No, Anvesh. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Shravan, any questions?
No, it's clear, very clear.
Okay. So, okay, let me just look at my notes again. Okay. So far I have bakery recipe component. Do I have anything in here? Nope. Earlier I mentioned to you guys, like whenever I click on here, I want to show more actions onto the right, right? Right now I'm, let me show this paint again. Once I click on cinnamon recipe, cinnamon roll, I want to show few things down here. And also when I click, not just cinnamon roll. Let me ask you guys another simple example. Okay, what if I want to, so I have showing description, name, and image for two things down here, right? For cinnamon roll and banana bread. What if I want to add another, let's say, another recipe component, or yeah, another recipe? How would we do that? Let me actually give you guys control. I just want who wants to volunteer?
Anvesh, I'll do.
Okay, let me. Okay. So my question is simple. So if I want to add, if I want to show another, bakery item, how would I do that?
I'll add.
You have the control. You have the control, so you can start coding.
So I need to download an image, right?
Yeah, let me help you with that. So let's go here. You want to, yeah, you can download anything you want or search for anything.
Oh,
The last one, tools
sorry.
and usage rights. And it's in, let me help you with the location.
Yeah,
It's
local.
in
See, I think.
C, code, Angular, projects, bakery website, source, assets, images, and sorry, my bad. So just rename it to chocolate. Since it's my mission, you probably wouldn't know the location, exact location. So chocolate recipe, pastry, and yeah. You also see down here, it's also included in images folder, right?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. If you see, the spelling is different, and if you look in the images folder down here, in order to avoid any confusion, I usually you know, yeah, no, not copy, but simply I would simply do that. So I would get the name and paste it here. So that way I would avoid any confusion. Okay, cool. So let us go back to our web page and see if it got that. Right? You see that it got that chocolate pastry as well. So you see how simple it is once we okay. Sharon was saying something else, but okay, let me stop remote control. So it's yeah, you guys can see that, right? Once you add one thing, it's simple to add more stuff by adding it to our list. And that is one of the advantages of using, ngFor. If you guys actually understood this, this is, I actually use the same similar structure and similar ngFor and using all of the properties and in my job as well. You can actually understand this. And this was also one of my interview questions when I was trying to prepare for one of the, not prepare, but when I was trying to get to one of the jobs, they asked me, how can I actually, what is ngFor and how can I actually do that? Use it within a component, and I had to explain this. So I'm just saying, if you understood this much, you can actually, you're good enough to attend interviews. I'm not saying this is the only question they would be asking. They would be asking more questions. but I'm saying your Angular skills are really good. If you can understand up to so far how to create different components, how to use component within another component, or how to create lists and all of that. Anyways, want to discuss more things, but we have only 10 minutes. So I'll stop here. I would continue with, as I mentioned before, once I click on coming back to our web page, once I click down here on the cinnamon roll or any other, I just want to show something on the right, and I want to do more operations. And in the next class, I would be going through those. I'm trying to go at a slow pace so that you guys can actually understand a lot of concepts, like how to create the model and what is a model and all of those. Just want you guys to understand it better. That is why I'm going a little slow. But if you guys have any questions, let me know. Any other questions with anything? One thing I would advise you guys is I've shared Bootstrap classes with you guys, a cheat sheet for that before. So I don't actually use all of that every time, and I don't try to remember all of them. But there are a few things I try to remember, like what is a row, how can I define columns, some of the basic classes like BTM, success, failure, and so on and so forth. And so it's important that you actually remember few of them, and rest of them you can actually search for those depending on your need. But it's important that you understand the Bootstrap classes and also remember the Bootstrap classes. So, okay. If you guys don't have any questions, I would stop the class. So once again, any other questions or anything?
Anvesh, we have prepared a bakery recipe list, right? Like name, image path, description. Can we do that dynamically? I mean, I did that. I wrote the chocolate pastry, the third thing. Like that. Can we do it dynamically?
Yep. That is what we would. That's a good question, and that is what we would be discussing in the later classes. And let me ask you a simple question. So we already defined new bakery recipe here, right? You see that? Right now it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? So if I click on this, I mean, you can actually try it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should try it right now, but you already know. Do you remember how a click event works, right? Like I would simply say click here, right, and equal to, and I would define a function name, right? Like let's say add new recipe item.
Attribute
and
binding.
And sorry,
I think this is attribute binding.
This is event binding. This is attribute binding.
Okay.
This is an event binding because this is a click is an event.
Okay.
Yeah, this is attribute binding because I'm actually changing the value of an attribute. So similarly, I can also use that for alt equal to, and I won't have a string interpolation defined here. So either way is fine, just different ways. But yeah, this is event binding, and I have to define this particular, thing down here. And once I do that, I have to access the start bakery list dot push, right? But what values would I actually get in here? So that is another question, right? How would I get those? Anyways, just starting like a conversation, how we can actually implement that. But we would be going through this in the next classes. Right now, I want to keep it simple where we would define everything down here. But in the next classes, we would be going through how to add items dynamically, how to delete them.
Okay.
Yeah, so on and so forth. Okay, let me also commit. Let's commit them directly. Let's say, okay. And I've committed that. And it's in my GitHub. Or it may be taking some time. Okay, maybe taking some time to get to my bakery website. But anyways, why push input? Okay. Okay, now it should be here. And 1 minute ago, it committed all the changes. So you see, it's already there here. So just go to the same link I shared with you guys in WhatsApp, and all the code should be there, whatever we have discussed today. Okay. I have another question for you guys. Okay. I'm saying bakery recipe name, bakery recipe description. What if I want to add, let's say, another property like bakery recipe? Let's say another property. Color. Okay. What if I want to add that? Anybody want to explain that to me? So I have three properties, right? Name, description, and image path. I want to just add another property, color. How would I do that? Lakshmi or Shravan. I would just take a couple more minutes and I'll let you guys go. But
So
anyone?
let's create it in another div tag.
Yep. Let me. You have the control, so yeah, you have the control, so you can start coding if you want to. I mean, before even doing that, if you see, I have defined the name and description. Where do they come from? From the model, right?
Yeah.
This is where I actually define name, description, image path. So the first thing what I have to do, add it here, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's if you go back to model.ts, it's complaining something, right? Do you want to look at that first? What is it saying?
I think small.
Okay. And also you have to, before doing that, it's also, you also see recipe list component is complaining something. I mean, that looks good. Now, right now it doesn't have any other issues.
Okay. Is this okay now?
Yep, that is just good.
Okay.
And before doing that, also if you look at recipe component, bakery recipe list start component, right? Not the model, the one, yeah. See, it's also, this one is also complaining. Why is it complaining? What does it say
I need
if
to
you
add
hover over it?
first here. Oh, sorry. Here
Add what?
to add another one. Sorry, color.
Yep. So put a comma, and the color. For example, cinnamon roll. You can
Color
add a brown for skin color. Yeah, you can.
Is it okay?
Yep. And also for the rest of them.
Yeah. Orange.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you're understanding the order, right? And how we would actually do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Then once we define it in model and also in wherever we want to get the thing, you want to go to HTML page now. That is where I want to show the particular item. So I can define it here.
Shall I use the string interpolation?
Again, just to give you a clue, yeah. Yep. Okay, just to make sure, you can go back. I mean, the name, sometimes you can get it right or wrong. So you can go back to model, copy paste that. I would usually do that. So I wouldn't have any errors. I mean, right now you did it right, but yeah. Okay, that's fine. You can simply paste it. Okay, so we can look at our browser again. See, does not exist on this type. Okay. Okay. The mistake you have done is, okay, I have the anchor tag here to here, right? You're trying to access this one outside of it, and that is where it's erroring out.
Okay.
So if you want to keep things simple, I can just say, we'll just put this paragraph in that particular anchor tag again, you know, and let us say this is another text. Once I do that, so this is cinnamon roll, brown, orange, chocolate. So
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, that is actually good what you've done. So if I want to add anything extra, again, I would follow the same thing, model, and wherever I want to define it, and finally in HTML page where I want to define the color or any other property. Anyways, I'll let you guys go. Talk to you guys on Thursday. I would continue with this one. We will define a few more things. Charlie would increase the pace a little bit in the next class. Anyways, good night, guys, and have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.